Hello, on this video I'm going to talk about Python tuple. Tuple is a collection of items and it is ordered but not necessarily sorted. It is immutable, you cannot change it once you create it, and also it allows for duplicate values. So let's see here how we can create a tuple. So to create a tuple, I'm going to give it a name and then I'm going to create a tuple. I'm just going to give some random values. So this is how you create a tuple. Now there's a second way to create a tuple. We're going to see that in a little bit. You can create a tuple with mixed items as well. So this is going to work just as fine. And if you want to put another data type here, this also works just as fine. So you can mix the data type, no problem. And you can also have a tuple of one item only. So this is okay, tuple of one item. This is not okay. This is not a tuple. So in order to have a tuple, you have to have a comma here. So this is okay to be a tuple. All right, so I'm gonna put it back here the way it was before. So now let's print this value here. So if I print the whole tuple, it prints the whole thing as a collection. Now you can also print one at a time. And the way you print one at a time is by using what's called the index. So numbers, I'm going to use the index of this collection. And that's going to be with square brackets. And then I'm going to give the index of the value that I'm looking for. So this one here is index 0. The number 3 is index 1, and this is index 2. So I'm going to pass index 0 right here just to check it. And in fact, I have 1. And if I pass index 2 here, I'm going to get the 7. Now, besides index, you can also do what's called the slicing. Slicing is when you get more than one value. So you pass two parameters here. So I'm going to pass 0 and 1. And what these two parameters here mean, it's the start and the stop. Now notice that the start is inclusive, but the stop is exclusive. In this case, we're going to start at index 0 and it's inclusive. In other words, we are going to get the index 0, which is 1. And then we're going to stop at index 1, but it is exclusive. So we're not going to pick up index 1. In this case here, when you pass 0 and 1, you're going to get the index as 0, which is 1, and then the number 3, but exclusive. So you do not get the number 3. So what about if I get 0, 1, 2? So I'm going to put 2 here, run it. Now I get 1 and 3. So this is a start inclusive and stop exclusive. You will not get the last item. All right, so let's create now tuple in a little bit different way. Let's talk about packing. So this is how you create the tuple. However, you can also create the tuple in a packing way. So I'm going to create a second tuple, and this tuple is going to be my tuple equals 2, 5, and 9. So this is what's called packing. So this here creates a tuple and stores on the variable myt. This thing here also creates a tuple and stores right here. So what creates the tuple is not actually the parentheses, but it is the comma separating them. So this and this is going to result in exactly the same data type. So just for checking, let's print the data type of these two tuples just to show you that it's exactly the same. So here I'm going to print the type of numbers, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the type of myt. What the type function does is displays the data type of whatever you pass as a parameter. So when I run this, you can see both of them are the class tuple. So that tells you that this way of creating the tuple is exactly the same way. The results are the same thing. Now, both of them are just fine. For me, I prefer this way here, maybe because I've coded on other languages. And for me, this makes sense more than this. However, both of them are exactly the same, and they're going to give you exactly the same results. All right, so now that you have the packing, let's take a look on the unpacking now. So this is the packing, and you can do also unpacking. So let's say you have this tuple right here, and you want to unpack that into 3 variables. So I'm going to create a variable A, B, and C, and then I'm gonna unpack the tuple into the variables A, B, C. So now I'm doing the all the way around. So this is unpacking. And now if I want to display the A, B, and C, this is gonna work just as fine. So this is unpacking the tuple. So how do you use that when you're creating programs? So usually when you have a point, for example, and you have a point of 2 and 5, and then you want to extract the x and y coordinates from that point, you do that by unpacking this thing, and then you're going to have your 2 values in a separated variable. So there it is. So this is how you use on actually programming. The other way I use very often is when you're swapping values. So swapping values of 2 variables. Let's say you have x equals 10 and then y equals 20. And you want to swap the values of these 2 variables. In Python, you would do something with a packing and unpacking at the same time. So I would do x comma y equals y comma x. So here I'm packing this stuff and sending to this variable here, and then I'm unpacking those at the same time. So this is a very Pythonic way to do the swapping. So now when I print x has 20, and then y now has 10. All right, the other way you use unpacking a lot, you get the returning values from a function. So let's say you have a function, and this function returns, for whatever reason, 10, 20. When you call this function, you can save those values in 2 different variables. So in this case, I'm going to use variables x and y equals my function. So when you make this call here, you're going to call this function, and this function is going to do whatever it does, and then returns the numbers 10 and 20. And then the numbers 10 and 20 gets unpacked into 2 variables here. So now if I print x and then print y, I want to have both values separated because I did the unpacking. So this is another example where you use tuple unpacking to get the values that you're looking for. Now let's loop through the tuple. So I'm going to create a tuple. My tuple equals dog, cats, bird. All right, so in order for me to loop through this thing, I'm going to do a for loop. So for animal in the my tuple, I'm just going to print animal. That's it. Now inside the tuple, we can put anything you want to put. I'm going to put here number 2, for example. It works just as fine. Here I'm going to put number 5, works just as fine, and then bird. So anything you put here, it's going to work just fine. So you can put just about anything you want inside this tuple. Now you can also put a tuple inside a tuple. So this currently is a tuple, but let's put a tuple inside a tuple. So instead of putting the number 2 here, I'm going to put a tuple, and the tuple is going to be 3 and 5. And then instead of 5, I'm going to create another tuple here, and that's going to be 4 and 9. And then instead of a bird, I'm going to have a bird and a cat. So now I have a tuple inside a tuple, or 3 tuples inside a tuple. All right, so the way we're going to print this is by using our 2 variables, a and b, and then A comma B. And then if you run this, you have all your values individually. Or if you want to, you can do print B. So you have all of your values in a different variable. All right, so now we have a tuple inside a tuple. But what if you have a tuple inside a tuple inside a tuple? Can you have that? The answer is yes. You can definitely have a tuple inside a tuple inside a tuple. So instead of number 3 here, I'm going to have another tuple, and then I'm going to have number 2 and 3. And then instead of 5, I'm going to have another tuple, 5 and 8. Instead of 4, I'm going to have another tuple, which will be 9 and 0. And then instead of 9 here, I'm going to have another tuple, which is 3 and 6. And instead of bird, I'm going to have bird and BD. And instead of cats, I'm going to have cats and maybe dog. So I'm going to put a new line right here just to show you what we have. So we have a tuple inside a tuple inside a tuple. So what if you want to loop through this mess of a thing here? So instead of putting a for loop here of A, B, I'm going to create another for loop, but I'm going to put a group first in my T. And then after that, and now if we run this, we have a problem here. It doesn't run, and looks like we have too many parentheses. So let me see here. So it's 2, 3, 5, and 8. This is looking good. This is looking good as well. And then we have the bird. This should be right here. Oops. And I think we have one or too many right here. All right, so let's try to run now. All right, good, it runs. So now if I run this with a tuple inside a tuple inside a tuple, now I have all of my items right here on the bottom. All right, so how about if you have a tuple inside a tuple inside a tuple inside a tuple? Can you do that? Yes, but even if with a tuple inside a tuple inside a tuple like we have now, like 3 tuples, this is a bad idea, okay? Don't do this kind of code. Once you have a tuple inside a tuple, like 2 of them, it might be okay, but 3, maybe that's too much already. You are doing something too complicated. I recommend you not do that. All right, so that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.